Hello, my name is Dennis Daly, and I'm an interviewer for the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. And today we have the great honor and pleasure of talking with Mr. John Nimeskern.
Nimeskern.
Nimeskern. And it is September 16th, 2009, and we are at the main library in downtown Cincinnati. May I call you John, sir? Or?
Yes.
Okay, John. It's a great pleasure to meet you, and we were talking a little bit off camera about your service, but we're going to go ahead and plow right through here with the interview. We usually like to start off by asking, where were you born and raised?
I was born in St. Bernard, Ohio,
Okay.
on August the 30th, 1925.
And you grew up in St. Bernard?
Yes, I did.
What was your family like? Brothers and sisters?
Yes, I had 3 brothers and 1 sister, and we went through the Depression, so our house was quite full.
Other relatives coming in to live, or?
No, just a family. Our house wasn't
Sure.
that big then.
And this is something that I've seen a lot of people interviewed over the years here. Did the Depression hit your family very hard, or?
Yes, my dad, he only worked maybe, if he was lucky, 2, maybe 3 days a week. But he already had bought a house, so we didn't have any house payments. That helped it, where we could keep food on the table, and actually he even helped some of his brothers and sisters.
Now, growing up in St. Bernard, where did you attend high school?
I went to Roger Bacon High School,
Okay.
and graduated from there after 4 years, and graduated in 1943, which was right about the middle of World War II.
I was going to say the war was already in full swing at that point. One of the things that we kind of like to ask here, do you remember what you were doing and where you were on December 7th, 1941?
Well, I was coming home from a basketball game, grade school, St. Clement's, and some fellow ran up to me. He said, "Did you hear the news?" Of course I didn't, and he says, "They bombed Pearl Harbor." I didn't even know where Pearl Harbor was.
Right.
Like most people.
Sure. So, and I'm sure then back home and around the radio all day, and so you knew at that point. What were you? Would you have been a freshman in high school, a sophomore in high school?
I was a junior.
Okay.
I was a junior in high school, and as soon as that happened, that was on a Sunday as far as we're concerned. It was a Monday, I think, for the Japanese because of the international date line.
Right.
And that Monday, well, in fact, they said right down here downtown in Cincinnati, there was guys sitting on the post office steps waiting to join the Navy or Marine Corps or whatever.
So you knew at that point that was going to be in your future once you graduated from high school, that you were going to go into the service.
Yes, definitely.
What kind of interest did you have in high school? Did you play sports, or did you have?
I was too little. Yeah, I was actually too small. In fact, I didn't know if I was even going to get into service. When I graduated from high school, I only weighed maybe a little over 100 pounds. And the guys said, "Well, you won't have to worry. You won't have to probably go." But I did get to go. The guy at the recruiting office says, "Go home and start eating a bunch of bananas."
I've heard that before from some other guys. So bananas were supposedly, I guess they would put on weight for it. So you graduated in 1943, and you were telling me earlier off camera you were 17 years old when you graduated.
Yes.
So what did you do between, you're born in August, so that would have been a couple of months before you turned 18. Did you go to work in that time
Yes,
period?
I did. My brother-in-law worked at Ohio Knife Company in Northside. And it was very easy to get a job almost any place at that particular time of the, And so I worked there, I don't know how many months until my 18th birthday. I guess I worked there maybe about 3 months altogether.
And then you went to, now when you went to the recruit, did you go straight to the Navy recruiting, or is that what you wanted to do?
I went to Norwood, Ohio, which was where my, what would you call it, draft board was located. And I went over there and told them I wanted to be drafted right away. So they put me on the list. And it took maybe about a month to go through physical and blood tests and whatever they had to do. And then took almost the whole month of September. Then I got called to go down town. Boy, my memory isn't that good all these years, but it was somewhere around 4th Street, Broadway and 4th, I think. We got physical again, and that's where the different branches of service, the guys were sitting at a table, and the guy said, "I'll take him."
Oh, really?
Yes.
So it wasn't a case where you got to choose your branch.
No, not
they went around
after
and
you
picked
once
people.
got drafted. So that's why a lot of the guys that I went to school with never graduated from school, because they were going to be 18 while they was in their senior year, and they wanted to go into a certain branch. So they dropped out of school and joined the Navy or the Marines or whatever.
So all of the people that were in the room when you went down, you were all draftees.
Right.
Okay.
That is correct.
Did you have any particular service that you had hoped would have picked you? Or
Yeah, I wanted to go into the Navy.
Okay, so you got picked by the one that was
Yes.
that you wanted.
I guess because I was so small.
And I had another quick question, just going back a little bit. So when you went to the draft board and declared your eligibility at 18, you went through physicals then before you were even in the service?
Yes.
They tested you? And,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they, like I said, they tested me in September, and then it was done again down at 4th and Broadway.
And from there you...
Then, yeah, after they once said they took you, golly, what did they do now? I forget. Anyway, I think we went home and they had my name and address, and I guess they told me that I had to report down at the post office at a certain day and time. And from there, they took us over to the terminal. We got on a train and went up to Great Lakes, Illinois.
Union Terminal must have been a sight back then, just full of servicemen and women. And
You can't believe the amount of people that, military, that was in and out of that place. And if they missed their train, you'd see them, they're sleeping in a chair or whatever they could find. Some of them, I guess, even laid on the floor. But yeah, it was a very busy place.
And you went down there with, did your mom and dad go down there with you to see you off?
No.
Oh,
no.
okay. Went down by yourself, huh?
Yeah. Well, no, I went with the group that went up the Great Lakes. I don't remember exactly how many there was. Maybe about 20 of us, I guess, was going up the Great Lakes at that particular day.
And no problems getting up there on the train?
No.
Okay.
Of course, everything was so new to us, we didn't know what to look forward to or what we were going to do when we got there. Of course, they did. As soon as we got there was somebody said, "You guys come over here, or do whatever, start learning discipline right away."
Now, your group that came out of Cincinnati, did it stay intact during boot camp, or did they split you up into different units?
I think we pretty well stayed together.
Okay.
Of course, I don't remember any of them anymore. Because
Sure.
After boot camp, we went our different ways. Some guys, they did go to school for maybe, like the Armed Guard, they used to call it. They used to travel on merchant ships, and they had a 5-inch gun or something like that on there. And they learned how to take care of that gun, clean it, and fire it and everything. And then there was signal school, and there was quartermaster. I mean, you name any rate that they had. But when they saw me, the guy says, "How would you like to go into submarines?"
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I was so small again.
Sure. I've been on a World War II submarine. Those are small portholes that get through
Yes,
there.
there is. And they did have one up at Great Lakes, a submarine.
Okay.
And we marched over from Camp Dewey that I was in. I was in Company 1536. And we got over there and they let us go through that. In fact, I really would have liked it in a way, but I thought, golly, my mom and dad would worry like heck if I was on a submarine underneath the water. So I told them, I said, no, I don't want that.
So this was after boot camp?
That was after, well, not quite. We were pretty well ready to graduate
Okay.
from boot camp, but it just happened to be that we were able to go over there maybe a week or so before we graduated.
So then, were you then assigned to?
No, they said sea duty.
Okay.
And after they said sea duty, there was a whole train load of us guys that went from Great Lakes down through on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad to Norfolk. And I'm trying to think now when it was, but when the train stopped, I couldn't believe it. It stopped right above Vine Street in St. Bernard.
Oh, really?
And I could see the church steeple, and I said to the guys, I live right in the back of that church steeple.
Too bad you didn't know you were going to be coming through there. You could have had your family waiting for you to say hi to.
It stopped there just long enough. I don't know what it was, maybe going to siding for another train or something like that.
Sure.
But
then you started up again and headed to Norfolk.
And went to Norfolk.
Great Navy town.
They had, we never stopped to eat. It took us, I don't know how many days to get down there. So they had a boxcar, I guess it was, that they converted into like a galley or I don't know if they served us box lunches or what the heck it was anymore, but we ate right on the train while we kept going.
Okay.
And then after I got to Norfolk, we were there a few days, and then they put us on a ship and sent us over to Pearl Harbor.
Oh,
it took us down,
from Norfolk, huh?
Yeah.
So
you went down through the Panama Canal.
Through the canal, yeah.
And to get an extra meal on board this ship, you only got 2 meals a day. So if you wanted the third meal, you had to volunteer for a working job. So I thought, God, I didn't get up and eat breakfast. I'll volunteer for lunch. They put me in a place where they had an incinerator, and all you had to do was keep burning these boxes up, paper and wood. It was like 130 some degrees in that thing. That's when we was going through the Panama Canal.
Did you get to see the canal? Were you
I went out a little bit and saw some of it, but not like some of the guys that watched the whole thing.
Now, was this the first time you had ever been aboard ship?
As a passenger, not as a ship's company, they call it. When you got on a ship that you were going to be stationed on, you become ship's company.
But at this point, this was still the first time you'd ever been on the ocean?
First time.
Any problems with seasickness or anything like that?
Not one bit.
Did any of the other, do you remember any of the other guys?
Oh, golly, yes.
Okay.
That was kind of sickening to see some of these guys. Boy, they turned every color of the rainbow, I think.
So you went through the canal. Did you stop at San Diego to fuel up or anything like that?
No, straight on. After we come out of the canal, the Panama Canal, we went straight over to Pearl Harbor. We got there on New Year's Day, 1944.
At this point, I know we had talked about the LCIs earlier, and we'll get to this in a little bit, but on this ship, were you doing a zigzag course across?
I suppose so. It's kind of hard to, if you weren't on that ship and stationed on it to see what was going on.
Okay.
Because it was really crowded. I think there was like 7,000 troops
on
that. It was a big transport.
When you got to Pearl, that was 3 years after the attacks. Did you see any of the damage that had been done during the bombing?
Yes, they had. After we got to Pearl Harbor, they sent us out to Navy installation. They called it IEA, and that's the name of a town there. And I was there maybe 4 days, I think. Each day you got out on a working party. They didn't let you sit around. And the one day I went down, I was on the Oklahoma that was bombed and torpedoed. And I was with another fellow. We had special bronze knives so it wouldn't make any kind of a spark. And the 14-inch powder, what do they call them?
Kegs?
Well, it was like a keg, but it was canvas around it.
Okay.
But it was filled full of powder, and there was a primer charge. We had to cut that primer charge off of it, and then they would.
Really?
Yeah. They didn't
so you were still salvaging off of the Oklahoma at this point? Wow, I've never.
And then they had pharmacist mates going down below that they could salvage any type of body or whatever.
That's fascinating. That is the first time I've ever even heard of that going on at that point. So you worked there
1 day.
1 day on the Oklahoma? Okay.
And then I got transferred. Well, I got called in a draft at the IEA, and they said you guys are going on an LCI.
Okay.
And
so another group of you were there, and somebody came and was selecting people for this LCI crew. Okay. Tell us a little bit about the LCI and seeing it and what the ship was like.
As I told you earlier, I really tried to get off of that. I wanted to get on maybe a destroyer or a battleship or something like that. You know, I had high hopes of being in the Navy at one time, maybe staying. But they said LCI. Now, I didn't even know what the letter stood for. And they took us down into Pearl Harbor and with our gear and everything. And I said, I'm going on the 439. And so I did. I got on there. And the boatswain's mate met us at the gangplank, told us bring our gear and bring it down. And we went down in the crew's quarters and picked out a bunk that was gonna be our bed for the rest of the time. And it just, I was so scared because the guys in the Navy, a lot of times, they really love to needle you. They said, oh, you're on a one-way trip. And I thought, hell, I didn't want to be on something like that.
So it's a smaller vessel, correct?
Yeah, it actually was about 155 feet long, and the beam, what they call it, like across, was 24 feet.
Okay.
And it wasn't too big.
And LCI stands for?
Landing Craft Infantry.
Okay.
But they converted that, as I told you earlier, they converted the LCI from being a landing craft infantry to take the first wave into the islands, because I was stationed out there in the Pacific Theater. They would need extra help because the battleships and cruisers and destroyers and the Navy Air Force, they would stop at a certain point, which was, I think they said about 4.5 minutes, which gave the Japanese plenty of time to get all set up with their machine guns and mortars and things of that nature. So they come along with this idea that if we could go, which we could go in and run up on the beach if we had to.
Okay.
And but we would take the first wave, usually was the Marine Corps, would follow us in. They'd stay in the back of us until we finished shooting our rockets, which were a 4.5-inch rocket, and they would shoot them by electric. And there would be, at one time they told us that we could shoot about 500 of those 4.5-inch rockets. So what they did, we didn't try to aim them. The only way they aimed them was steer the ship maybe a degree or two as it was going in, which would make the rockets go in a different pattern.
Okay.
And that kept the Japanese pretty well pinned down. And the first wave, they a lot of times got in there and got a good foothold. And then the supplies and the next wave, the second and third wave and so forth, would start coming in, which they could advance real well then.
So you, your LCI actually never carried troops.
Well, I wouldn't say never. There was one particular time we had a special detail.
Okay.
And we had a small boat, an LCVP, I think they called it. And it would take the guys that we had, the Marines, it was Marines and infantry, Army infantry, both came on our, there was on our ship, and there was a small island in the Kwajalein in the Marshall Island group that they thought there could have been Japanese on it, and they wanted to make sure that there wasn't, because if they had a radio, they could send back to Japan and let them know what was going on. So we took those those infantry and Marines and took them in, and then we put them in the small boat, this LCVP, and they went into the beach and cleared it out. And they did find one or two Japanese on the island. Uh-huh.
So getting back chronologically, so you got assigned to your LCI, and was there additional training on the LCI while you were in Pearl Harbor still, or?
Well, it was more or less to get accustomed to Navy life on board this ship. Different ones, you'd maybe be assigned mess cook. You helped the cook. He prepared the food, but you helped bring the food out to the men. Actually, it was more like a boarding house. We had tables, and we'd set bowls of whatever, like green beans and well, we didn't get too many potatoes, gravy and bread and meat, different vegetables that was in cans, and we sit it out, and very orderly. They say, "Okay, chow down." And we just sit down and pass the bowls around. And you could have all you wanted, but they didn't want you to waste anything you took.
Had to clean your plate.
Yes.
So this was on board the ship?
Uh-huh.
Okay. How many were in your crew?
There was 40 enlisted men of all different rates, and there was 4 officers, captain, executive officer, and the other 2 officers doubled over as maybe let's see, they would be maybe in charge of commissary, and then I don't remember, they had more than one duty.
Sure.
They weren't that much to do, but they had more duties to do than the captain and the executive officer.
So you had pretty tight quarters on
Yes,
board this.
yes, we did.
Now, how did you sleep? Were you stacked?
Oh yeah, and there was a stack of 3.
Three
In fact,
bunks?
I had 2 fights when I was on the ship.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Concerning?
I think your nerves got to the best of you after a while, and you just had to look at a guy and say, "Come on, let's go on the fantail." That's where they used to fight. Although I did mine on top deck. The captain said, "Get the gloves for him."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody stood around and watched
Yeah.
the fight?
But I got kind of, what would you call it, talked into. The guys that come to me and say, "This guy said he's going to knock your block off." And then they come to me and he say, anytime he's ready, tell him to come on. You know, one of those egging him on deals. But after it was all over, you shake hands with each other. You got it out of your system.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Do you remember which bunk you had in the stack?
Well, it changed sometimes. I was on the bottom bunk, and then there was some time that I was up on the top.
Okay.
We got moved around, and sometimes they'd move us around. I don't know why, but they would move us like from the forward crew quarters and bring us back, which would have been almost like underneath where the captain's quarters were, and close to the engine room.
Okay. So there you are, you're getting used to it. Where did you go first once you left Pearl?
Well, first we went to the Marshall Islands, to Kwajalein Island.
Okay.
And we went and fired rockets at different times. We went because it was like an atoll, and there was more than one island, of course. But in high tide, they could walk sometimes from one island to another.
Okay.
Maybe waist deep or something, but it would be low enough. And so we take the ship and aim these rockets at the different places, or just shoot our 40 millimeters and 20 millimeters. And we take on ammunition at night after we fired, so we always had a supply of 20 millimeter and 40 millimeter. But that was the first engagement. And
now, was that a lot of combat going on when you were firing your rockets at Kwajalein?
Well, usually we wouldn't put our own troops in danger. Usually there was nobody on there until we went and shot the rockets.
That makes sense. A question that I just had that came up into my mind when you were talking about that: how did you supply yourself? Did you basically tie up to other ships, take supplies on that way?
Yeah, well, there would be ammunition ships, and there would be ships that carried commissary. There'd be cases of plenty of beans and vegetables and things like that. And we had a freezer on board this ship, and they'd have beef. That would be an area I think that was our staple. Was mostly beef. I don't remember of any pork because probably that might have spoiled quicker.
So you got meat, actually. You got beef.
Yeah.
Huh? That's pretty good. So how long were you at Kwajalein? Do you remember? Did that
We
last?
were there, I'm trying to think now. It seemed like we was there maybe close to maybe a month.
Okay.
Because that's another thing. When we were there, our ship ran over a coral pinnacle and tore up the starboard shaft and propeller. So we couldn't travel with the other guys when they went up to another part of the Marshalls, Roy, R-O-I, the island of Roy.
Okay.
And so that's when they gave us our little job of taking these guys up to this one little island, which was only maybe a couple hours away from Kwajalein. And
To search for the Japanese?
Yeah, search for those, but we found a couple of them.
How did you repair the damage on your ship? Did you have to pull up in a dry dock, or did you?
No, we stayed like that until after the Kwajalein, we went back to Pearl Harbor. So when we got back there, we went into dry dock, and they replenished the damage, putting a new, if the shaft was bent or anything like that, a new propeller, took care of us then.
And so you got some leave at Pearl Harbor?
Oh yeah, we get Liberty, not leave,
Liberty,
but just
you're
Liberty.
right, yes.
Yeah, Navy is Liberty. And you know, you had to be back on the ship at 8 o'clock because they had, what'd they call that? Curfew.
Okay.
I have to think a little bit.
Sure.
They have a curfew that you had to be back on board ship because there was no lights or anything on, as far as I know, in the city, Honolulu, or
Sure.
any place like that.
So every night you had to come back and sleep aboard ship?
Well, you only got Liberty every other day.
Okay.
One crew, half of it stayed on, took care of the ship, while the others went on Liberty.
How was Honolulu back then? Was it a
Well,
fun place to have
there was
Liberty?
just a flood of Marines and Army, Navy, Air Corps. So it was pretty crowded.
And how long were you there before you shipped out again?
Well, we were there probably, I guess in the neighborhood of about a month or somewhere around there. And then we left. They had two groups. They called it Tractor Group 1 and Tractor Group 2. Tractor Group 1 went and hit Saipan. And we were laying off out in the ocean going about 100 miles up and back. And if they needed us, then we had the convoy that I was in, Tractor Group 2, they had LSTs that stayed in the center of our convoy, and us LCIs was out on the perimeter of the convoy. And that's when a Japanese airplane flew over, and we were all firing at it. And
Oh, really?
we don't know who got it, but he went down.
Oh, okay.
He must have came from either Guam or Saipan. And they really needed us. They did take care of Saipan on their own, that group. So then we hit Guam.
Okay.
And the initial landing, I'm trying to think. I should have wrote that stuff all down.
Well, that's okay.
But we was doing that for about a week or 10 days, I think, going back and forth in the ocean. And then when we hit Guam, one of our destroyers hit one of our LCIs close to the beach.
Really?
Yeah, and they had to actually take it out to sea and sink it.
Oh, really?
They stripped it down of everything, and they sank it. Wasn't worthwhile trying to fix. And it was, I guess, a special detail that we got also then. They had a Japanese cave that they could roll a cannon in and out on a track. And the big ships, the battleships and stuff, they couldn't find out where it was. As soon as it would shoot a couple of times, it would be gone. So they couldn't. So they sent us in, our group. There was 7 or 8 of us LCIs, and we made a strafing run along the beach.
Okay.
And as we did, they started shooting mortars out, and they hit our ship.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So you got hit, your particular
Yes,
LCA
they hit up close to the conning tower, they called it, where the bridge would be of a big ship. And there was 3 guys that got mortally wounded, and they actually died on board ship, and one fellow got hit, and he lived till the next day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The hospital ship saw what was going on right away, or the ship that was converted into a hospital ship, and they signaled us to come alongside, and they took our dead and wounded, and we left them, and we never did see any of those guys after that. They got shipped back, I guess, to Pearl Harbor or,
Sure.
or whatever, to the hospital.
So so you got hit by mortars.
That's the best we could find out. There was
Okay.
mortars, but that cannon that the Japanese had must have shot a few rounds out too, because the big ships then finally pinpointed where it was, and they knocked it out.
Okay. So what you were doing was sort of trying to draw its fire?
I guess we didn't know it at the time, but that's about what it was.
Now, when you said you were strafing, that meant you were just
Shooting randomly.
your 40 millimeters
Yeah,
off.
and 20s and stuff. Yeah, we was just shooting randomly at the beach.
Okay.
We had no real target, but that was the point of it. The whole thing was to find out what was going on, because they kind of had the Marines pinned down where they couldn't advance up the way that they wanted to go.
So that kind of brings me to my question I was going to ask, but you kind of answered. So you went in before the first wave, shot off all of your rockets to kind of keep the Japanese pinned down so the Marines could land. Then after that, while a battle was going on, did you kind of get held in reserve in case they needed you to do stuff like this, like strafe the beach? And, okay.
They would keep us in reserve to do different little jobs, whatever it might be. But then we would also just take like refuge away from everything, so we weren't in their way.
Okay.
And just hang around until if they find out they didn't need us then anymore, they didn't need to make any kind of landings anyplace. Then they would ship us off to get us out of the way in case the Japanese Navy would have happened to come. Our battleships and carriers and that would have engaged in a sea battle.
Sure.
So, but I think our job was done after we got hit by the Japanese
At Guam.
Mm-hmm.
So after you got hit, was there a lot of damage to your ship from the mortars, or?
I don't know if I was on the bow gun, and they called that the #1, and where it hit the 40 millimeters was about. I was bow 1, and they had the #2, #3 40 millimeters, and I came back and there was blood all over the place, and they just tried to get us out of the way. They said, "Get down, go down." And went underneath the deck where the top side was. That's where the galleonette was. And we just tried to stay out of the way. And the pharmacist mate, he tried to do whatever he could. But there was so many of them there for one guy to try to take care of.
Sure.
So what he caught, we didn't know what the heck to do. We were sort of startled, I guess.
Right, yeah. So then the wounded were taken off onto the hospital ship, and then what did you guys do then? Did you ship out from Guam at that point?
Yeah, I think we waited for a few days, and the higher ups, like the admirals and that knew what was going on and did all the tactical warfare. They just wanted to get us out of the way because we went back to Pearl Harbor and got fixed up and painted and so forth. And I think we went in dry dock and we had to get down underneath the ship and scrape and paint the thing.
Sure.
Which was a nice job.
Yeah. So then ship out of Pearl again. So you had some more liberty in Hawaii.
Uh-huh. Well, we shipped out from there. I'm not too far wrong if I say we went down to Guadalcanal and we went and I think they called it Ford Island or something like that. I forget, Hutchison Creek or something. I can't remember anymore. But we ran up on the beach then, on the sandy beach, and we stayed there. And there was a what do you call it? A village, a native village, not too far from where we was.
Okay.
So what do you call it? We didn't actually get liberty, but we had a little thing like a rowboat with a motor, and some of us got in that thing, and we went back and saw this native village, and little kids, 2-3 years old. Hey Joe, cigarette Joe,
oh,
cigarette
really?
Joe. They had more there puffing away.
Oh, the kids were smoking?
Oh, heaven's sake, yeah.
So did you get to actually get into the village and meet some of the people?
And they had one big communal building, and I guess that's where they held their meetings or whatever. It was like their town hall or something. But it was really well constructed, and the Japanese never bothered them there. I guess it wasn't significant as far as a military base of some sort or have any military there. But they had us again out of the way. And there was a place that we went to get fuel and stuff like that. I think they called it talagi by the Guadalcanal.
Okay.
And the stores that we get, we just form a long line, and when the stuff was dropped off, and you just keep passing the thing back until you got it on board ship, and then on board ship they stacked it down in the holes someplace where they kept all the canned goods and stuff.
So you're basically being held in reserve here at Guadalcanal, right?
Yeah. Well, they probably, I think what they were probably doing, getting ready to assemble a new invasion. And that would be a post where they could strike closer than coming all the way from Pearl Harbor.
Sure.
And that's when they went up to Leyte in the Philippine Islands.
Okay.
And how come they took Leyte, I don't know. Us little seamen, we just did what we were told.
Right.
In fact, our captain, we did guard mail, they called it. Whoever was the commander of our group, he had all the information after they once left, and they would have what they called guard mail. And each ship would get a package of whatever, the maps and whatever. And so we went up to Leyte and went and landed there and did our thing of shooting rockets and things like that again, and taking the first wave in. But then we were getting a little bit closer to where the Japanese were had more airplanes and things like that that they could fly over, and so our ship, our little ship, we would go to the head of the windward part, and we had a fog machine that they call it, make smoke, and we would make like a fog.
Oh, really?
And we would hide, that fog would hide the vessels, the battleships and so forth that might have been there, or any other ships. And we did that quite a bit, make fog.
And this was at the Philippines?
That was in the Philippines, at Leyte. And
did you?
That's when MacArthur landed in the Philippines, when he said, "I'll return."
Yes.
That's where he went in.
I was going to ask, did you see General MacArthur?
No, not really. He went in on a little small LCVP or something like that, a small boat where he could drop the ramp in the front and he could walk right. Well, he walked out in the water.
Right. Now, by the time the Battle of Leyte was fought, I think kamikazes were starting to be used.
Yeah, there was, but not as plentiful then yet.
Okay.
Because the next, these are only the invasions that I was in. There was other groups like maybe in New Guinea and different places like that doing the same thing, getting the Japanese, over around those islands and things. But after Leyte, we went down to a group of islands, and I can't think of the name of I'd have to look at a map, but the name of the place was Ulithi.
Okay.
And that's where we start massing together a new task force to go to Luzon. That's the big island where Manila is. So then MacArthur and the admirals, Nimitz and some of the guys, Halsey, they would get together and map out exactly. And it was amazing how the brains that it took to put all this together. Well, we traveled in our little convoy. When we got to Luzon, you'd look around, you could almost walk from one ship to another. Where they all come from at one time. It was such a precise thing that they did, and figured this all out, and they had all the necessary things that they needed: ammunition, food, oil, whatever. And but that was really amazing to me, how they could put together a task force like that.
And so you got to see the big armada assembled?
Oh, yeah, when daylight came, everybody coming in would be more or less like pitch dark. And daylight comes, and you start looking around, and say, where'd they all come from? and the big transport ships that had these small boats on that they would carry troops also besides the LSTs. The LST stood for Landing Ship Tank. They'd also have trucks, jeeps, things like that in their, I don't know what they called that deck. I guess the mechanical deck, for lack of a good
Sure.
word. But they would open their bow doors and drop the, what do you call it, and they'd drive right off onto the beach.
That must have been an awesome sight. And that's the biggest number of ships that you had seen for an invasion.
Oh,
correct?
it's like, yeah. They would come from all over.
So did you come out and you did your thing there? So you came out and you were in front of everything. You were in front of the entire invasion, correct? When you
Yeah.
went? So you got to come in and look back and see the whole thing getting ready to happen when you were coming back after you fired the rockets. So you did that, and then the invasion of Luzon took place. And another thing, it seems like they were keeping you closer to the action now. You weren't going back to Pearl Harbor anymore.
That's right. It was too much of a drain to use up all the fuel and time and everything like that. And there was like two groups of us. So now when we hit Leyte, I think it was, that's when they hit Iwo Jima. And that was another group of our LCIs that hit Iwo Jima. And they got really massacred. A lot of guys, in fact, now I see some of them when we have our National Association for LCIs. And then the state of Ohio has their own reunions. And some of the guys that were on board some of these ships, you can talk to them because you was one of them.
Right.
But somebody else would try to talk to them, they'd numb up.
Well, sometimes you got to earn the right to
I guess.
be able to speak, you know. So how long were you around the Philippines? Were you there for about another month or so? Or?
Well, sort of, I guess. I can't remember where we went after that. It seemed like we went down to another place, something like Ulithi or something like that, and refueled and took on stores. And see, now we couldn't make water on our ship. We had to get water, fresh water from another bigger ship.
Wow.
And that was a Navy rule. They had to give us 2 days, at least 2 days of water, which would be maybe say 3,000 or 4,000 gallons of water.
Sure.
But most of the time they filled our tanks up. And then we'll be close to some island or something like that, and they took it over and everything was okay. We could take on water from the island itself sometimes.
Okay. So then you were getting ready for the next invasion.
That was Okinawa.
Which was Okinawa. And at this point, that's the first Japanese island, really. People kind of forget that's really on the outskirts of Japan, and a lot of Japanese lived on Okinawa. And this was in the spring of '45, or was this early summer?
I think it was closer to February or March.
Okay.
Because it was a little on the cool side.
Okay.
And like I said to you earlier, we were there 9 days before D-Day. And the reason we were there, we was giving cover and assisted the underwater demolition team.
Oh, okay.
And what they did, of course, you probably guessed, they went and swam underwater, and they would connect any mines and anything like that, get them all connected, and then they would blow them up at a certain time. Well, what they did, we did this on this one side of the island, but the big boys that did all the thinking, they weren't going to actually land there. It was a diversion tactic so that the Japanese would bring their big guns and stuff like that over there. And then when the actual landing happened, I think it was Naha, N-A-H-A, I think it was, Naha, Okinawa, the name of the town. That's where they hit, was on the opposite side of that island.
Okay.
And of course they had to sweep the mines again. The underwater demolition team could do that, I guess, maybe at nighttime, I don't know. But that's why we were there. And it was the neatest thing to see how they picked those guys up out of the water. They all got in a line, and they were so far off of from the beach, that a small boat ran down there, and the guy was inside the rubber life raft that was tied up alongside this LCVP. So the rubber life raft was only about a foot or so off of the water, the highest, and he had a big loop, a rope, on a loop on both ends, and he had his hand inside of that, and the loop was out there. And when they'd make a pass, you catch it or you stayed there. Most of them caught it, but once in a great while, a guy, maybe a wave would take him a little deeper than what he could catch a hold of that thing. But they made one pass and pick him up.
So what happened if they missed? I mean, did they?
Well, they had to stay there until they come around again, and they knew where the guys were or how many. Maybe it was only one, and they'd come back and pick him up.
So you said you were there 9 days before D-Day.
D-Day.
And so they were doing shelling and all of that kind of stuff on the beach.
They also start, like I said, they start getting all these kamikazes now. Now they're within flying distance from home, from Japan itself.
Okay.
And they trained those kids to go one way. They weren't coming back.
So I was going to ask, so did you see a lot of kamikazes around Okinawa?
Yeah, they sent us out to what they called a picket line. We was out maybe 10 or 15 miles from Okinawa, and be in line with the way their flight pattern would be from Japan. And they would radio back and say that there's a group coming in, and luckily we never got hit, but because they didn't want us. We were such a small fry.
Right.
They'd rather go to a battleship or a carrier or destroyer or something like that. In fact, we tied up alongside of a destroyer that shot down, or either took about 3 of them down the plane dive down the stack of there was about 20 or 25 planes that they were accredited for.
So, wow, so yeah, you saw them hit ships with the kamikazes. Then you did your rockets, and now actually, did you do your rockets?
No,
at Okinawa?
we didn't have to
because
do
you were
it
on
there.
the diversionary. So.
Yeah, we was on the.
Okay.
We had, while we was at Okinawa, there was 7 fellows that needed to go to the dentist, and myself and another guy went to see a doctor, and so we went on this. It turned out to be, like I said, a hospital ship after they got their troops off, and they had a bunch of guys that was all burnt and stuff like that. Some had 2 hands all wrapped up, couldn't feed themselves. So one guy had a good hand, he'd help feed the guy, and it was really heart-sickening to see that. I mean, and so we went, and after we got finished, we had to wait till everybody was done, and we got off of that and went on the small boat and took us back to our ship.
Okay.
And it wasn't more than about an hour or so that ship got hit by a kamikaze.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
The hospital ship.
The hospital ship that I was on.
Wow.
To see that doctor.
You were lucky on that one.
They got hit all over again.
Man, oh, that's terrible. I've never heard of that one before. I've heard of they really liked aircraft carriers, but I've never heard of the hospital
this was
ship.
a pretty good size. They didn't know if their troops was on there yet or not.
Right.
And they just picked out something big and dove into it.
So around this time must have been when the war ended in Europe.
Was it in May?
In May of 45.
45, I think.
Do you remember hearing about that?
Our radio men could listen to the radio. They wouldn't let them send, because that way they could pick up your fix of where you was and who you was, maybe.
Sure.
But they could receive radio from San Francisco or Pearl Harbor or something like that, and they'd have regular nights where they'd send out messages, and some guys would type up the news or what they could, or they'd tell us, and they'd say, well, the war is over in Europe, and they said they were going to start sending those people into the Pacific.
Was there a feeling, was there a big cheer, adulation when you heard that, or was there just this feeling of, we still got this war going on here?
Well, our part was still going on.
Right.
We didn't know how long it would go. The next invasion was Japan itself.
Right, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Had you started to prepare for the invasion of the home islands?
Well, when we left Okinawa, it took us, like I said, about a month to get back to Pearl Harbor. And on the way back, I was up on the conning tower, and the executive officer at that time, I said, I've been out here about 18 months now. I said, when do I get to go back home? And he says, you've been out here 18 months? He says, you think you can be ready tomorrow when we get in Pearl Harbor? I said, I'm ready right now. And when we got back, I got off of the ship with another guy, and I can't remember his name now. One of them was Arilla Perella. He was a motor machinist. And we went back and got off of the ship there, sent us to on another ship and took us to San Francisco. Got to San Francisco, and they processed us and give us a 30-day leave.
Now, what was that like? You come under the Golden Gate Bridge, and
Oh boy, I'll tell you.
You see the States again?
Yeah, I had a $50, and I was going to throw it up on the bridge. It was comical, because it was like bloop instead of going way up,
Okay.
you know. Yeah, it was really great to see. It does look golden. It's
Sure.
From the distance.
And everybody was happy to see the servicemen coming home, and
No, see, that's the thing. Now, and I don't regret what the guys are going through in Iraq and Iran. They come back, and there's a big people waiting for them to come back, because
Sure.
they come back in groups. When I got off of the ship and come home on a 30-day leave, my mom and dad didn't even know I was coming home. And it took 4 days to go from San Francisco to
Sure.
Cincinnati on a train.
and the war was still on at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, I got off the ship in July,
Okay.
and when I was home, I don't know, maybe about a week maybe, they dropped a bomb in Nagasaki and
So
Hiroshima.
you were in Cincinnati when
I was
that
in,
happened.
yes, I was in Cincinnati.
Okay. So you heard about that just on the radio or the
Uh-huh.
newspaper? Okay. And then just right after that, the Japanese surrendered, and you were still at home when that
I was
happened?
still at home.
What was that feeling? That must have been a great feeling of relief.
Oh,
That
yeah, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew since the war was over, I'd be getting out pretty soon. But see, the reason I interrupt now is when I was on that ship that got hit by the kamikaze, I got off of it to see the doctor. My face was terrible. I had acne so bad, and I had fungus infection on my hands and feet. We called it the jungle rot. When I got off my leave, I went back to the post office, and they said, go on back home. We don't know what to do with you, because the war was over, and
Right.
I didn't know what to do. And then they said, we'll let you know. So I'd call up on the telephone. I said, this is so-and-so, John Nimeskern. What am I going to do? Stay home another week. And I said, well, I'm running out of money. I said, I don't have no pay. And they said, well, okay. About the next couple of days, they called and said, come on down. And they sent me to Crane, Indiana, which is a big naval ammunition storage where they keep a lot of, for the East Coast, I guess, big 14-inch and 16-inch shells, 8-inch shells, whatever, you know, all kind of ammunition. And when I got there, I went to sick bay. I said, I was told all I had to do is turn myself into sick bay and you take care of me. They said, what's the matter? I said, well, look at my face. Look at my hands and feet. And they start treating me then.
and did they take care of it?
No. They sent me up to, after that, they had a group of us went up to Indianapolis. There was a radio school up there. And we was up there for, I don't know, a day or two. The first day I got there, I said, where's the pharmacist, mate? I want to see the doctor. My feet was tan from here on down from that stuff that I was soaking my feet in. It looked like I had a suntan. But the doctor, he was treating me. I said, they told me they would take care of me. I said, there ain't nothing happening. He said, how soon can you get ready? Again, I said, I can get ready right now. He said, all right, we'll get you on a train tonight, send you up to Great Lakes. And that's when I went up to the hospital at the Great Lakes.
Okay.
And it was a dermatology ward. They took over a whole camp. Like I was telling you, I was in Camp Dewey. Well, they took over all these barracks that across the street from Dewey. And it was all dermatology, Marines, Navy, and they treated us there. And I got X-ray therapy treatments and so forth. And after I got all those, the fellow, the commander in chief of that dermatology ward, he was from Kansas City when he had his own practice. And he says, "Do you want to get out of the Navy?" I said, "Yeah, how soon?" And he says, "Okay." He said, "When you get out of here," he said, "you'll never get back again." I said, "That's okay with me."
So you had changed your mind over the
Yeah.
course of the war. You had said earlier that you thought about staying in.
Yeah,
So.
all this glory, these movies where you guys are going out on liberty having a lot of fun, you know. It wasn't all like that.
You got jungle rot.
Yeah. But
So you got mustered out at Great Lakes?
yeah, I got a medical discharge.
Okay.
And just for fun one time, my cousin and I went down. He was going to join the Navy, and I knew he wasn't going to make it, so I went with him. I said, "Yeah." He said, "You ever been in the service before?" I said, "Yeah, I was in the Navy." He said, "Where's your discharge?" And I showed him. He said, "Get the hell out of here."
So the war's over, and you come back. You come back to Cincinnati, and kind of just a couple of minutes here. What happened next? Did you go back to school or start to work? Or?
No, I should have went back to school, but I was tired of everybody telling me what to do. I've had enough of that. So I got a job working in McGregor's. They made golf clubs
Okay.
and tennis rackets. So I was there, and I took or I went on a job training with the VA. And I did that for, I don't know, 10 or 11 months. I was like, God, this is terrible. In the meantime, I had taken a civil service exam for the Railway Mail. They sort mail on a train. And, well, I was a sub. You didn't get a regular job until you put in your time, and there was an opening. So I subbed out on the trains, which was really neat. It was fun. Time went so quick. You was always fighting time. You had to get the mail worked up so you take it and put it off wherever you was going, and you get more mail there. So I did that, and then so with my Navy time and post office, I retired from the post office when I was 55 years old.
Wow.
I had over 35 years, and my wife said, "Well, you should have stayed there. You'd have got a better pension." I said, "I couldn't stand that anymore either." 35 years or 30-some years was enough.
So you got married. Did you meet your wife after the war?
Yeah, Yeah, I met her after the war. I met her at a dance. When I used to go to the St. Bernard Eagles used to have a dance on Sundays. It was Stag. And I asked her to dance, and after a bunch of weeks, I started asking her all the time to dance. And then we started going steady. And we got married in 1952.
1952.
And
Okay.
had 4 children.
4 kids. Great.
Yeah, and a daughter was first, and 3 sons. And they all are doing real well. My daughter went back to college after she was married, and she always wanted to be a teacher. And now she's teaching down in Louisville. She's probably, I don't know, maybe about 13 or 14 years that she's been teaching down here now.
Great. That's excellent.
Yeah. And my sons, 2 of them work down at the power plant. One's in management down at the power plant in North Bend, Miami Fort.
Okay.
And my other son is a registered nurse. The youngest one, he's a registered nurse. And he worked at the hospital. And there was 2 doctors asking him to come in to be their special nurse in the operating room. It was orthopedics.
Okay.
And after the one had to retire, they brought another doctor in then. And then in the meantime, Dr. Kremchek, a big name in Cincinnati,
Sure.
and a group of about 10 doctors formed the Beacon Group.
Okay.
And they're out there close to where you went to school, I guess. Out there it's actually in Sharonville.
Okay.
But it's real close to Blue Ash. And so he works out there. In fact, I've been out there several times for myself.
Well, John, we're coming to the end here. I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for doing the interview. Thank you for your service. And it was a real pleasure meeting you and talking to you, sir.
Well, I hope this all turned out okay for you and for everybody.
I think it's great. I think you did a great job.
I don't want to sound like I'm bragging.
No, not at all.
But it is humbling, our generation, I guess, what we went through and what we had to do. We just did it and got it over with.
Sure. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot.
Hello, my name is Ray Hughes, and I'm an interviewer for the Veterans History Project conducted by the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and locally administrated and conducted at the Cincinnati Hamilton County Public Library, administered here locally by Brian Powers, who is our cameraman today. And today we have the honor and privilege of interviewing a World War II combat veteran, John R. Nimeskern. And John, it's a pleasure to meet you. And is it all right just to call you John?
That's it. Make it easy.
Okay. John, if you would, what's your full name?
John Roy Nimeskern.
And where were you born in, John?
I was born in St. Bernard, Ohio, and
The dates?
August the 30th, 1925.
And where were you living in St. Bernard?
Well, I lived on Orchard Street when I was a kid, and my dad had bought that house when he worked for Procter & Gamble, and we always lived there. That's the only place I ever knew as a kid.
Yeah. What was your dad's full name?
His name was Bernard Nimeskern, and I don't know what his middle name was offhand.
And he worked at Procter & Gamble?
Yeah, for about 17 years. And he had to quit because he kept getting sick with typhoid fever and stuff like that. And he asked the boss to get him a different job. He said, well, if you don't like, quit. And he looked at him, he said, well, I quit. He said, I couldn't afford to be off of work that long when I had children, married and had children to raise.
What did he do for a living?
Well, he was a steam fitter, and he wrapped the pipes after they put them together with asbestos. So that would have been a bad thing now.
Yes, yes. Who did he go to work for after Procter & Gamble?
Well, when he left there, he went and worked with Formica. He was a pipe fitter, steam fitter there also. So he worked there until he retired.
And was Formica over on Spring Grove?
Yeah, it was on Spring Grove Avenue.
Yeah.
He just moved a little ways down from Procter & Gamble to Formica.
Yeah. What was your mother's name, John?
Her name was Agnes. Her maiden name was Helmkamp. Of course, when she married Dad, it was Agnes Nimeskern.
And how many children did your mother and father have?
Well, my mom had 6 children, but we only had 5. One of them died when it was an infant, about three weeks old.
I see.
His name was Robert.
How many brothers and sisters?
I had 3 brothers and 1 sister.
I see. Were you familiar with your grandparents as a child?
Yeah, we lived right next door to my grandma and grandpa Nimeskern.
I see.
And I never did know the grandparents on my mother's side. They were both dead.
I see. What were your grandparents' names?
Well, my grandfather's name was Jacob, and my grandmother's name was Catherine.
I see. And did he work anywhere?
He worked at Procter & Gamble's and worked his whole working time and life at P&G and retired from there.
I see. And what church did you folks belong to?
Well, living in St. Bernard, I went to St. Clement's School and church, and went there all 8 years, and then I graduated from there, and I went to Roger Bacon High School.
And graduated from
Roger Bacon.
Did you play any sports or do anything when you were a youngster?
Well, I did at grade school, but I was too little when I got to Roger Bacon. The high school people were a lot bigger and taller than me, so I just kind of went the the way of studying and just for school, and not any sports or any. I don't think I did any other extracurricular activities.
But you did graduate from high school.
Oh, I did. Since I lived in St. Bernard, we had the possibility of going to St. Bernard High School and Roger Bacon at the same time. But I actually graduated from Roger Bacon. I went to St. Bernard. They had a machine shop where they taught us how to use all kinds of machinery, lathes, shapers, milling machines, cylindrical grinders, surface grinders, the whole bit. They taught us how to do that, and I thought, well, maybe that'll come in handy if I go into the service. I might, but I never did get to use it.
Did you have any girlfriends or anything while you were in high school?
Not too much. I kind of played the field, I think. I love to dance, so I danced with them all.
Yeah. Do you recall how your mom and dad met?
My dad's sister introduced my mom to my dad, and I don't know, back in them days, I don't know what the romances was like it is today. But no, they got together and finally got married. Of course, I don't know too much. I was younger by then. I was the second youngest in the family. I have a younger brother.
Did you? You told me your birthday. What was your birthday again?
August the 30th, 1925.
1925. So you've taken us from your birth and your church and your schooling, and the year you graduated from high school?
I graduated in June, I think June 6th of 1943.
I see. Now you were old enough to remember Pearl Harbor. Can you tell us how you heard about it and where you were?
Whoa, that was a shock. I didn't even know where Pearl Harbor was. Like most people, I was coming home from St. Clement's school for a basketball game, and one of the neighbors says, "Hey, they bombed Pearl Harbor," and I was kind of stunned. I didn't know what it was all about really, because I didn't even know where it was. So what he caught as the next days or so, you got more information. There was, the papers start printing more about it, and on the radio. Didn't have television back then. That was a little later. But no, I didn't know where it was. And when they said this was on our date, it was a Sunday. But for the Japanese, it was Monday, because the international date line, the Japanese lived in the time that would make them a day ahead of us.
Right.
So, what he caught, there was guys that went down to the Fifth Street in Cincinnati and sat on the steps and that, waiting for the Navy and the Army and the Air. Well, I didn't have Air Force, and they called it Air Corps. Waiting for those to open up so they could join the service.
Did anyone else and your brothers join the service, or sisters?
No, my second oldest brother, I think, was drafted, but I don't think he stayed in the Navy. He didn't pass after physical after he once got up to Great Lakes Naval Training Station. My youngest brother was drafted after the war. He went into the Army. And
what was his name?
His name was Bernard, named after my dad.
I see. So you're 16 years old, though, at this time.
Yes, I graduated from high school. No.
Or you might have been 17.
I was 17 when I graduated, but I was only about 16, 15 and a half or something like that when the war started in Pearl Harbor.
Right. So you went on and finished high school.
Yes, I got to finish high school.
And then while you were in high school, did you have any part-time jobs or anything like that? Delivering newspapers or doing anything?
Well, I used to set up pins where they had the bowling alley. That was before the automatic pin setters and all that. progressed.
How many lanes did you set at a time?
Just one.
Just one lane?
Yeah.
You never jumped over and did
No.
two? Huh?
No, they made more jobs that way for us young kids.
Yeah. What lane did you set pins at?
Oh, I was St. Clements Bowling Alley.
Clemens?
St. Clements.
Oh,
they had their own bowling alley in the basement. So, what he got, I did that, and we used to get 4 cents a game. That sounds tremendous. But then on league nights, we got 5 cents a game, so we would make, I think, 75 cents a night.
Wow, you set a lot
pins for 4 hours.
Yeah. Did you go to a lot of dances too?
Oh yeah, every time there was a dance close by.
Were they all at church or some?
Well, some was high school, some was at the grade school level, and some would be maybe in the neighborhood, like St. Bernard Eagles used to have a dance on Sundays. That's where I met my wife.
I'm going to ask you this question.
Yeah.
At a St. Bernard dance?
It was St. Bernard Eagles, yeah. They used to have a dance every Sunday. And what do you call it? We used to go to Alt Park also. Somebody would be lucky enough to have their dad's car, and we'd pile in that thing and go to Alt Park. They used to have dances at the, whatever that called the building there. But it was always a lot of fun. I learned how to dance in a tavern in St. Bernard. The girls at OLA used to have dances, and they
Our Lady of Angels.
Yeah, they used to sell tickets for that, and they said, "Come on." I said, "Oh, we don't know how to dance." I said, "Okay, we'll teach you." Well, we went to the dance, never danced. We left there, and we went to the tavern to get a sandwich, like a hamburger or a double-decker or whatever. And this girl come up to me, and she says, sold me the ticket. She says, "Have you got a nickel?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." And I reached in my pocket and gave it to her. She went over to the jukebox and put the thing in there, and she said, "Come here. I learned how to dance that night." And I never stopped.
So the dance where you met your wife, what dance was that again?
That's St. Bernard Eagles.
And did you know her beforehand?
No, I just asked her to dance, and then maybe next week I danced with her again, and all of a sudden I asked her out. We dated a few times, and what do you call it? I asked her to marry. Well, I gave her an engagement ring, and we got married shortly after that. I think it was about maybe 9 months later. So they got everything all set up, the church and the place where they're going to have the reception and all that kind of stuff.
And what was her name?
Irene.
And her maiden name?
Her name was Irene Eilers.
How do you spell that?
Eilers.
And she was your age?
Well, technically, she's a year and a half, I think, younger than me. So there's a time where she seems like she's only a year younger, and then when I have my birthday, she's a year and a half younger.
What was her birthday? Do you remember that?
May the 15th, 1927.
What schools did she go to?
She went to St. James in Wyoming, Ohio, but then she went to Cincinnati Public School in her high school years.
Which one, do you recall?
It was a vocational school.
Central?
No, it wasn't Central then. They had back then they had a whole bunch of different high schools, different places. Mm-hmm. They finally, Central was put together when they took all the high schools, different ones like automotive and whatever, and put them into one place.
How long did you and Irene, correct?
Yeah.
How long did you go together before you got married?
About a month or so. Not a month, about a year, a little over a year.
Mm-hmm. Did she work anywhere at that time?
She worked for her parents. They had a grocery store in Laughlin, and she worked there.
Where was the store located in Laughlin?
Let's see, what was that? Wayne. Was kind of on the corner of Wayne and Wyoming, I think it was.
Yeah.
Boy, you're really taxing my brains.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's all part of your character and your background. What were their names? Her parents, Irene's parents.
Irene's parents was Albert Eilers and Flora. Her name was Flora.
Did you get along well with your in-laws?
Oh yeah, my mother-in-law treated me as well as my mother. She was a very, very good person, very religious person. And in fact, I took to her pretty close.
Mm-hmm. And when did you and Irene get married? And what church were you married in?
We was married at St. James Church in Wyoming, and it was April the 16th of 1945. Well, no, wait a minute, it was later than that. No, I can't remember. I know it was April the 16th, 57.
Oh, so you got married after the war, way
Oh
after
yeah,
the war.
yeah. I was about 9 years, I guess, after the war.
Mm-hmm. So you graduated from high school, but you knew her when you graduated from high school.
Yeah, that was June the 6th of 1943. And I knew that, what do you call it, like most of us, I knew that I was probably going to go into the military service. And a lot of people don't remember that when the war broke out, a lot of guys went down and joined the Marine Corps or the Navy. They got what they wanted. And then with so many of them joining those things, the Army wasn't getting their share. So what they did then, that's when they come along and said, when you hit 18, you cannot join a service that you wanted. You were drafted. So some of the guys, they dropped out of school in their junior year so they could get in the Navy or the Marine Corps or whatever branch they wanted. And they never got to graduate from high school. They got honorary after the war was over, and the high schools they went to, a lot of times you'll even see today there'll be somebody that got their high school diploma 70-some years later. So what do you call it? They had a pretty tough time getting the service that they wanted after they once was drafted. You walk down the line and the guy'd say, I'll take him, and it might be the Army. Maybe it was the Marine Corps. A little guy like me, they said, I'll take him. That was the Navy.
When did you join? You graduated June of '43 from high school.
Yeah.
When did you go down to the Navy, join the
Well,
Navy?
I registered for the draft when I hit 18. That was August the 30th of 1945. Wait a minute. August the 30th of 43. And then I got drafted I went over to the Norwood Draft Board and said I wanted to find out if I was going to get into the military service. So I said, I want to be drafted. So I think about a month later, I did. I was drafted, went through the procedure, got physical and blood test and different things like that. And then it was, I think, about maybe 3 weeks to a month maybe later on that I was drafted, which would have been in October of 43. And I don't remember the exact date, but it was in October of 43. I went up to Great Lakes Naval Training Station.
I see. Now, are you going with Irene? Is she your
I wasn't going with her then.
I see.
I went, I dated this girl a few times, Margie Collins. She went to OLA and I met her at a dance, I think. But we never ever got real serious.
Okay. So, had you known Irene at this time?
No, not
No.
yet.
Okay. So now you're up at Great Lakes, and you arrived there when in Great Lakes? What month and year?
Well, it was October of 43. We had 9 weeks training, and I got to go home in November of 43. And I had my 9-day leave, and then I went back after my leave back to Great Lakes. And I was there a couple of days, and they got a gigantic group of sailors, and we went by train from Great Lakes to Norfolk. And we got to Norfolk, we got on a Coast Guard ship, of all things, and went from Great Lakes to Norfolk to Pearl Harbor. Went through the Panama Canal.
Remember what ship that was you were on?
I think it was the USS Cambridge. I don't know what the number was anymore.
The Coast Guard ship.
Yeah.
And what training did you receive there at Great Lakes?
Just regular, what do you call it? I didn't get to go to any service school or anything like that. I think it was at that particular time of the war when they were starting to build up more in the Pacific. And so, what do you call it? They sent an awful lot of guys to Pearl Harbor via the way I said. And they sent a lot of us on these LCIs. And they were converting the LCI into a gunboat. And so the ship's complement, when they were built, was to be for 2 officers and 20 enlisted, which would be signalmen, radiomen, boatswain's mates, and seamen, with no rate when you're a seaman. And they doubled that, and so now they put more and bigger guns on our ship. I was on the bow, 40 millimeter. I was a loader, and what do you call it? What I'm trying to think of, I guess, sometimes my mind sort of slips with my memory.
But you went all the way through the Panama Canal to Hawaii on the Coast Guard
on
ship.
the Coast Guard ship, yeah.
How long of a trip was that?
I think we left somewhere around the 10th of December of 43 and got to Pearl Harbor on New Year's Day of 44.
Mm-hmm. And then what did they do with you then? They assigned you?
Well, you didn't do anything. They might have a work party at IE instead of you just sitting there. Sometimes they would send you out on a work party. Well, I did go out on a work party, and I went on the Oklahoma. They had it in dry dock, and they would send guys that was worked there, send them down below decks, and to the ammunition magazines, they call them, where they stored the gunpowder that shot these big 14-inch shells. So they would send those things up on a cable. When they got up there was another fellow and I, we cut the primer charge off of the powder so that it wouldn't blow up. And we had a special knife that wouldn't kind of make any kind of spark or anything like that. And I worked there the whole day. And when I went back the next day, I got drafted and got put on my ship. But that Oklahoma was a terrible mess.
Was it?
Yes. Oh.
Is that from?
That was from the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor.
It was still a mess in 44.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. And then, of course, they never did try to get the USS Arizona up.
Right.
They left it there, and it's a monument to all the guys that were buried at sea in that Arizona.
So the next day or so, you were assigned to an LCI?
Yes.
And where is that located at?
Well, it was in Pearl Harbor. We were docked in Pearl Harbor, and they was refitting us, like I said, with bigger guns and some the early 4.5-inch rocket launchers. And they got that all fixed, and I think it was January the 29th was when we went to the Marshall Islands, and we took, there was 3 islands there that we went. We hit one, and to take the Marines in and infantry, Army infantry, and when we secured that island, the next day or so, we hit the next island. So there was three engagements in the Marshall Islands that we went and took from the Japanese.
Now, when you talk about an LCI, you said it was referred to as a boat because
Yes.
of what?
Yeah, they referred to us as a ship, not a ship, a craft. We weren't allowed to be called a ship because we wasn't at least 200 feet long. We were 156 foot, and I think the beam was 24 feet wide.
And you had how many officers on board there?
Well, when I got on, we had 4 officers, and the ship's complement was finally 40 men.
Now, and you would carry the infantry and unload them off at the beach heads?
Well, we were capable of that, but we never ever did that. We had a small island that they wanted us to go and make sure there wasn't any Japanese on it, and we took on Marines and infantry on our ship, and we told them, said we can't supply your food and everything. They said that's okay. They'll come there. They put barrels of water on our ship and K rations for the. So our captain says, look it, we don't have to do this, but he says I would like for you to volunteer. Let those guys have our what we used to call a nickname, the rack, our beds. Let them sleep in that, and we'll let them eat our hot meals. Man, those guys thought they died and went to heaven. They was on these islands for almost 3 weeks or so, and they haven't had a hot meal. And the guys, they were very appreciative of us. You know, we had a pretty good name with the Marines because we protected them as long as and as far as we could, taking them into the beach where we went, like I said, the 3 in the Marshall Islands, and our ship also went to the islands in the Marianas, the Guam and Saipan. Well, now they hit Saipan first, and they had us lay out in the ocean. We go 100 miles one way and go backtrack the 100 miles. We kept doing that for, I don't know, till they thought they might have to have us as replacements and you know, help the guys on Saipan if they needed more troops. But they didn't. So then after they secured Saipan, then we hit Guam. And that was our job, to take the Marines and the infantry into the beach and protect them as long as we could so they could get a foothold on the beach, so they could start pouring in more. There'd maybe be 8 or 9 waves of Marines and so forth go into the island. And they kept trying to project themselves further inland all the time. So our job was just to keep the Japanese pinned down in there. They were hunkered down in a hole in the ground, and so they couldn't set up their machine guns and mortars to shoot at the guys as they were coming in. So they did that pretty well. That they, you know, were very appreciative of us. In fact, even today, I had some Marine come at our breakfast. He says, we loved you guys. Mm. Yeah. I kind of choke up a little bit now and then, but
you were under fire the whole time yourself.
Well, when we went in, when we kept them hunkered down, we didn't get fired at too much, but we made a strafing run on Guam. There was some guns that was in a cave. They kept our Marines from advancing. So they took our group. I think there was 7 or 8 of our LCIs. We went along the beach, and we started firing, just fired, and just keep the Japanese thinking they were coming after them and so forth, I guess. But the bigger ships, they wanted to know where those things were. So the cruisers and battle wagons and stuff like that, they could get a fix on these caves where that they'd roll this thing out this cannon on a little bit of like a train track. And they'd wheel it back into the cave. They'd shoot, and they could also set mortars out. Well, that's when we got pinned to a degree at our position, where either a mortar or that that cannon, Japanese cannon, shot and hit our ship, hit us midships right around the conning tower, we called it, where everything was controlled from that conning tower. The captain or whoever the officer of the day was would take care of how the ship was steered and that everything progressed along with the crew and everything. The guys, there was 3 of our guys killed, and I don't know how many got injured, that wound up getting a Purple Heart. And I was up on the bow. There was 1 or 2 guys that got hit and was bleeding up there, but I was lucky. I never got a scratch. All the time I was in the Navy. I thank the good Lord for that. The bigger ship out there, an APA, I think it was, they signaled us right away and said to come alongside, and they took our injured and dead and took care of them. They left the ship. We never saw them again. So that was at Guam, and then if you want me to go on,
yes.
We after Guam, they got all set up because they was doing nothing but island hopping, one after another. They kept the Japanese, as far as taking the islands, kept them busy. We went to Leyte in the Philippine Islands. There was also a big sea battle, which we weren't part of. But one of the jobs that we could do would make smoke. And they'd put us up the head of the wind, and we'd all of us LCIs would turn on these fogging machines, they called them, and we'd make smoke. They burned oil, made a a cloud of smoke, and it would hide the other ships. And there was all kind of little jobs they could figure out for us to do. And so then after Leyte, we got sent down and got ready for the next one, which was Luzon. That was the big island in the Philippines where Bataan and Corregidor and all those famous names during the war. So we went up there, and I'll tell you, it's amazing how smart our admirals and generals were. When we would leave in our little convoy, was all amphibious. But the bigger ships that would get to these places before us, because they would start shelling the cruisers and the battle wagons. So now we're getting closer to Japan, and the Japanese, I guess they figured do or die pretty soon, because we were taking one island after another. And they had the Japanese sent down a pretty good sized task force and engaged with our Navy. But getting back to what I was thinking, when we got ready to hit a place, the logistics and all that kind of stuff was so well figured out. They had supply ships, ships that would carry the oil, that could supply more oil to the bigger carriers and battleships and all that. And the supply ships would have food stuff. When we left, it was dark, and we said, well, we're about ready to get to Leyte. We didn't see nothing. It was still dark, and as the sun started coming up and got light, you looked around, you could almost walk from one ship to another. There was so many of them there. That's how well they figured this thing out. What do you call it? I was really amazed to think how this was all figured out, and how it was coordinated with the Army and the Navy. The Air Force, the Navy Air Force, of course, they did their job too. They would bomb and strafe the beaches along like with the battle wagons and cruisers and destroyers. So after Leyte, I think we regrouped again in a group called Ulysses. It was an island, but it had a pretty good sized harbor where we could all get. So we all got ready. And the next thing was Luzon, and what do you call it? We went up there and took the troops in, like we always did what we were supposed to do, and what do you call it? I all the time I was in the Navy, I think I was out on the ocean most of the time. I never hardly ever got to go on land. Of course, I didn't get seasick, so that was a good thing. But after Luzon, we went to another place, and I thought we were going to be on our way to Australia, because we probably needed some repairs on and so forth with our ship, but we had General Motors diesel engines that powered our ship, and what do you call it?
Would you have 8 General Motors?
We had, well, there was 2 shafts with 2 propellers on each shaft, and each shaft had 4 General Motors diesel engines on each one, so we had 8 General Motors diesel engines on them. So what do you call it? Another thing, the reason they sent us away from Leyte, I think there was a typhoon, and what do you call it? They wanted us out. They always try to get rid of us, get us out of the way, but they just wanted us not to be in their way with the bigger ships. And so I'll tell you the truth. I never really said I was scared, but I'll tell you, we go up on a swell, a wave, and you look around and see nothing but water. And you slide off more or less like into the trough. Like I said, you have water all around you. Then you go back up. That's what we was in, that typhoon. So after we got outran the thing and got away from it. In fact, I went up on the bow one time. The officer of the deck said, "Go up and see if you can see the ship in front of us." And I went up there, and it was raining so hard, I could hardly see my hand in front of my face. It was coming down so hard. And so he said, "Come on back." I on the radio, or the telephone on the ship, and said, "Come on back here before you get thrown over the side." And the captain of our whole flotilla says, "Turn your running lights on." He said, "I'm more afraid you're hitting one another than I am a Japanese sub, because the subs couldn't hardly hurt us with a torpedo. We didn't draft enough water. We weren't deep enough for that torpedo to be low enough to hit us. The only thing they could do is maybe surface and hit us with their surface guns." So what do you call it? After that was all, the war was getting pretty well over. So the next big thing was Okinawa, and they were like 100 and some miles away from the mainland of Japan. So we was sent up there. In fact, we was at Okinawa 9 days before D-Day, before they actually were going to actually hit the island. And our smart admirals and generals, they had us as a decoy. We was over on this one side of the island, and the underwater demolition swimmers, they was swimming underneath the and clearing all the mines and stuff of, and we did that many days ahead of time because they wanted the Japanese to bring their artillery and stuff over to protect it. So what they did, the night before, the underwater demolition team swept and made channels for the small boats to bring the guys in and hit where they wanted. The name of the town was Naha. That was the big name of the town on Okinawa.
Yeah.
So what do you call it? I was kind of wondering. I've been out here, I think it was like 17 or 18 months, didn't do nothing but go one after another island, and so they sent us back to Pearl Harbor. And
Did you get to go into Naha or anything?
No. Like I said, we very seldom ever got a chance to go on board or shore. But the time from Okinawa, so we were so slow, we couldn't travel more than about maybe 8 miles an hour or something like that. If you could travel 100 miles in a day, that was pretty good. And when we got close to Pearl Harbor, I said to the executive officer, he was kind of new. I was on there before he ever got on our ship. And I says, when in the heck do I get to go back to the States for a leave? He said, be packed tomorrow. He said, you get to get off tomorrow, as soon as we get in Pearl Harbor. So we got to Pearl Harbor, and I gathered up all my stuff, put it in my sea bag, and went to Pearl Harbor and got on a ship that was going back to the United States. And we went and came into San Francisco. And we was there a couple of days, and finally we got our orders was typed up and everything. And so in case a shore patrol ever challenged us, what are you doing, where are you going, and all this, we just have our orders that said we're going home on leave. So it took us about 3 days by train to go from San Francisco to Cincinnati. Went from San Francisco to Chicago, and then from Chicago to Cincinnati. And my mom and dad didn't even know I was coming home. I mean, they didn't have anything to do about it. I got on or in the taxi, and I had to share the taxi with some other passenger, and they left me off at first. I was the first one off, then took the other person wherever they were going. I went up on our back porch, and I knocked on the door, and my mom came to the door, and she just stared at me. She didn't know what to think. Yeah. Well, I've been talking an awful lot, Ray. You got any questions?
Yeah. You, to make it real clear, in your LCI, you actually had a front ramp that went down, and that's how you let the men off as they were going on the beaches.
That's the way it was built. They had one on the starboard and port side, and they would run those. They had a thing that come off of the bow, and there was a winch, they called it, would power this thing. They'd pull these ramps off, and they'd drop it down in the water, and they'd be on the ship. The guys would run down off of that. Well, when they found out how successful our job was as a gunboat, they took those ramps off. We didn't even have them anymore. They put rocket launchers on there. We had, I think it was 4 bays of rocket launchers on each side. And each bay, I think, had 4 or 5 rocket launchers, and each rocket launcher held 12 rockets, and they were fired by electricity. that was all done in Pearl Harbor. They put that all on us then. They wanted us to be nothing but a gunboat. And
Not carrying troops.
yeah, what we did that one time, I told you that we was at Marshall Islands. There was one tiny little island. They didn't know if there was any Japanese on it, and they was afraid if they had a radio, they could radio back and tell the Japanese hierarchy what was going on. But let's see now, where was I? They at one time they claimed that we could shoot 500 rockets. They just keep pressing the electric buttons, and those things we fire. Every so often you might see on a newsreel World War II on news. Sometimes they might say, "Oh, this happened 70 years ago" or something like that. They would show these rockets they'd take off. Now the way they would direct those, the ship had to be turned to the port and starboard. They kind of weave back and forth like that. So when they did that, the rockets would go to the left or the right, and they do that real slow, and they keep firing these rockets. So it would just cover the whole beach. So that was the biggest part of my Navy career. Then I got back home. Oh, I had nothing but a pharmacist mate on our ship, and all he did was pass out a pill in case, or paint it with mercurochrome or something like that. And I did get to go. They sent us when we were at Okinawa. They sent us over to a bigger ship. There was some guys had to go to the dentist, and there was another a fellow and myself went to see a doctor. I had a fungus infection break out on my feet. I could I couldn't wear anything real tight around my feet, and I said to the doctor on that ship, I said, "Can't you send me back?" He said, "No, son." He says, "You have to be replaced." So he said, "When you get back to the States," he said, "you turn yourself into sick bay." So I thought, well, I ain't gonna let anything stop me from getting my 30-day leave. So after I got home, I think I was home about a week. I got home in July sometime. I was home about a week, and all of a sudden they dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, and they declared the war over after they did all that. And so I was home when the Japanese surrendered. First thing I did, I went to church and thanked the good Lord. So I was home on leave, and after the war was over, my 30-day leave was up, and I was supposed to report down at the post office building and report to the Navy. So I went down there, and they said, "Go on back home. We don't know what to do with you because the war's over." So I went back home, and I had the telephone number, and I call up and I say, "Do you want me to come?" "No, stay home yet." So my 30-day leave was more or less extended longer, and then finally they said, "Okay, come down here tomorrow," and they sent me over to Crane, Indiana, which was a real large ammunition supply place for the Navy. They had all the different kind of shells and anything that the Navy needed as far as firepower. So when I got there, I remembered the doctor on that ship at Okinawa said, when you get to get back to the States, he said, "You turn yourself into sick bay." Well, the first thing I did, I went to the sick bay. I said, "How about taking care of this?" And I had a spot about that big on my foot and was going deeper and deeper with this fungus infection. So they said, "Oh, you stay in sick bay here." So I stayed. I was a hospital, or that was their hospital more or less. I was a bed patient. And finally they sent me from there up to Indianapolis, Indiana, And when I got there, I did the same thing. I said, "Where's the sick bay?" I said, I went there and I told the doctor, I said, I kind of lost my mind a little bit. And I said, "When in the hell are you going to take care of me?" He said, "You be ready this afternoon. You go on a train. You're going to Great Lakes." So when I got up to Great Lakes, I went to this receiving room or building, and the person there said, "Oh, you're going to go up to the dermatology ward." He said, "Get your stuff and go." I said, "I ain't going anywhere." I said, "I can hardly walk." So she said, "Oh, okay." So they got a car, put me in that, and drove me up to the dermatology ward, where all the Navy and Marines went to the dermatology. And I was a bed patient there, I think, 3 weeks. And after so long, the doctor, he was in command of the dermatology ward. He said, "You want to get out of the Navy?" I said, where do I sign?" And he says, "Well, okay." So they was glad to get rid of me, I think, because they was trying to get rid of guys that now there was like, what, 15 million men and women in the military during World War II. They didn't know what to do with all of us, so they sent them back home. So I got out of the Navy on December the 10th, 1945. So I didn't have a long time in the Navy. I was only in about 2 years and 3 months, I think it was.
But you were in how many different battles?
Well, 7, I guess, altogether. Count 3 in the Marshalls, Guam, Saipan, Luzon, Leyte, and Korea, or Okinawa. Yeah, I didn't spend much time anywhere other than being on the ocean.
Yeah. What rank were you when you were discharged?
Well, I was a Seaman first class. Like I said, the only way you could get a rate after you once got on board ship, you had to be a striker, they called it. So I went and put in to be a signalman. So I was with the signalman gang. I'd stand watch, and you had what you use for signals, flags. So there would be 2 of us. One be up in the conning tower and watching for blinker light messages, and also whoever was in charge of that flotilla, that captain would send out a message, and they'd maybe send it on flags. Well, he'd yell down to me, put on whatever flags that was needed, or numbered flags, and when sometimes what they were usually was a course change. You'd be traveling along, and for navigation, they'd give you a new course to take, and that flags would tell what course to take. So I was a signalman on that, and the signalman would teach us and show us and tell us how to read read the blinker lights and semaphore, the whole thing. Well, I passed the exams, but I got off of the ship before I ever got to be rated. Like I said, I didn't spend much time after I got back home on the States. I wasn't worried about being a signalman anymore. I was glad to get home.
Have you ever had any reunions with anybody that was on your ship? Now, what did your LCI have a number?
Yes, it was the 439G. The G stand for gunboat. We had, like I said, the signalman that was on our ship, that was on the longest. His name was Kraft, Charlie Kraft. He was from Tennessee. Probably the best signalman. He could read blinker light faster than you could send it, and everything. He was really good. He called up what took over. He was the exec. Took over. He became the captain of our ship, and he called him up somehow or other. Got in touch with him. He said, "What do you think of us having a reunion?" And the captain says, "If it's the only 2, you and me," he said, "let's have it." So he got on somehow or other a tape or something like that of the guys' names and where they lived and so forth, and made copies of the thing, and sent letters to the ones that he could get. And also he said, if you get this and you know somebody, tell them. So we had our first reunion. I guess it was what, 40 or so years after.
How many guys show up?
Well, the first time there was pretty many. I think there was about 20 of us. Of course, there was guys that lived so far away. Maybe our first one was close to where our signal lived in Tennessee. We went to Nashville. Well, there was another fellow from Cincinnati who lived in Reading. He and I kind of got hooked up after we got off of the ship. Like I said, he lived in Reading and I lived in St. Bernard. And we went together. We drove down together down to Nashville. And I'll tell you, in today's way of life, you'd think we were both, all the guys that was on the ship, we see each other, grab each other and hug each other because there was such a camaraderie and closeness to each other that now, like I say, now they think we belong to the, what is that called? They call it LG something or other. But no, we really, well, we were so daggone close together, 150 some feet long. In fact, I had a couple of fights because we just got tired of looking at each other, I guess. And what he caught, guys, they challenged the captain, said, put the gloves on them. So we went and had a boxing match. Yeah, what he caught, that. Some fond memories. In fact, there's times at night when I happen to be laying awake, a picture will come just like that, just like boom. I can be on that ship just that quick.
Yeah.
Of course, like you.
Well, I was never in combat.
No, but you still was with a bunch of guys you got to be, you know, real close with.
Yeah. So you're discharged. You come home. Now, are you going out with Irene yet, or what? What's going on?
No, I'm still going to dances yet. I'm freelancing.
All right, just hurry up and get to Irene. I want to know how you know.
Well, I met her at St. Bernard Eagles dance.
What year was this?
That was in, back, I'm kind of guessing to be around maybe 49, 48, 49, I would think. And because we got married, I think it was in 1951, I think it was. I had to look at things now anymore, but my members.
But you went with Irene for a couple years?
No, just about a year.
Oh, okay.
I went and took exams and got my most permanent job was a job with, they called it railway mail. They used to sort mail on a train.
Right.
And well, until you got on a train, the job you had then was down at Liberty and Dalton Street, the post office down there. That was close to where the Cincinnati Reds played their baseball games at Crosley Field. You worked there, and then when the opening come up out on the trains, then you could go out there.
Where was out there at?
What?
Where was out there at?
Oh, well, you would get out on the train. The district I was in was District 4, and the trains that was in that district was the Chicago, Cincinnati, Chicago, Richmond, Indiana, and Cincinnati. One was Pennsylvania, and the other was New York Central. And of course, the New York Central was the biggest organization. So I subbed out there, and unbeknownst to me, it wasn't going to be a good deal because they started taking trains off. There was cost too much to run the trains and pay the guys because you had to stay overnight maybe. So they had to pay for your night's lodging and meals. And so eventually there wasn't any trains anymore that carried the mail. It was a good deal for the railway mail. I mean the railroads. they got paid so much to haul the mail. They always said every time the train left the depot down at the big depot downtown, that train was paid for. So all the people that was on there, that was all profit. So what do you call it? I did that, and then finally, like I said, finally wound up as a clerk, distributor clerk in the post office downtown.
At Liberty and
At
Dalton?
Liberty and Dalton.
And
I guess I got tired of too many people telling me what to do, so as soon as I could, I had to wait to retire from the post office. You had to be have 30 years military or military and post office combined and be 55 years of age. Well, I had to wait till I was 55. So what do you call it? I went and put in to retire about a month before I was 55, and that was 1980. August of 1980. When my birthday was August the 30th. That's when I had my time. And what do you call it? I've been retired. I've had some part-time jobs, you know, just to kind of pick up an extra buck or two and stay out of my wife's hair.
No.
But I've been retired since 1980, and this is 2019, so this in August will be 39 years that I've been retired.
Well, tell me a little bit about Irene. Did Irene have, was she working at any time?
Well, she worked at her mom and dad's store, and she stayed at home and helped her mother. They had a big house, and she helped to do housework and things like that. But then on the weekend, when the store was more busy, she would work there. That was the only job she had. Although during the war, she had a job working at a dry cleaners. That was part of like a on-the-job training type of thing from school. She was a seamstress, learning to sew. She is a beautiful seamstress. So she, I think it was Fenton dry cleaning and so forth, where she worked there, and she'd help repair and sew buttons on or whatever they needed.
They're still in business too.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
And she worked for them, but she never really worked. Although there's not a what do you call it, weak, a lazy bone in her body, because she is a workaholic. She's always got something to do.
Now, how many children did you and Irene have?
Irene and I had 4 children. Our daughter was the oldest, and
Her name?
3 boys. And what?
What were the names of your children?
Oh, our daughter's name was Deborah Sue Nimeskern, and then she got married, and her maiden name, she still uses that in her email addresses. So had Deborah Nimeskern Gandenberger. That's her married name. And our son John that brought me down here today, he was named after me. His name's John R. Nimeskern Jr. My second oldest boy's name was Arthur William Nimeskern, and my youngest son's name was Raymond, I can't think of his right name, Raymond Michael Nimeskern.
And Raymond's going to go on the trip to New Orleans.
Yes, he is. He, what do you call it, he's looking forward to it. I said, well, what do you call it, let me know now. You said you're going to be able to go. He said, yeah, I'm going to be off, Dad.
Good.
So.
I lost my train of thought. Oh, grandchildren. How many grandchildren?
My wife and I, we were lucky to have 9 grandchildren, and we also have 8 great-grandchildren.
Good.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yes, it is.
Any of them named after you?
No.
No, John
No.
Nimeskern?
Well, middle names. My one grandson's name is. I got to think. Robert John.
Okay. Well, that's close enough.
Yeah. Robert John Gandenberger.
we're getting close to the end of the interview. I wanted to see if Brian had some questions.
A couple. I was just curious. Your last name. What is it?
My last name is German. Nimeskern. They tell me that, I don't know what Nims is now, but Kern means corn, C-O-R-N in German.
When the first Nimeskern came to Cincinnati?
The stories I remember my dad telling me, his grandfather owned a couple of tailor shops here in Cincinnati, and it was during the Civil War. And back then, if you had enough money, you could buy your way out of the service, because you'd come up and say, you go in place of me, and I'll give you so much money. Well, he did that for a while, but then it wound up at the end, I guess he ran out of money, and he still had to go. And so I guess kind of figuring out numerically, he probably was here came to the United States in, what do you call it, 1850s or somewhere around in through there. But no, he was a tailor by trade.
Well, I was curious, since you grew up in St. Bernard, there was a movie theater that opened there, I think around 1930 or something like that. Do you remember that movie theater?
Yes. Actually, there was two of them. The one you're talking about was the Andalus.
Yes.
And
which is where the public library is now, the branch is.
Yeah. And the Eagles, where I met my wife Irene, they used to have movies there. In fact, they had silent movies and talkie movies. You got one of each when you went. And well, of course, I was only about 5 or 6 years old. I couldn't even read it. I had to sit there and stare at it, watch the cowboys ride their horses and so forth.
And where was that dance hall? Is this the same place that you went to the dances?
Yeah.
Where was that in St. Bernard?
It was on Tower Avenue and Washington, I think it was.
Okay. Is it still there, the building?
The building is still there.
Is it being used for anything?
The Eagles, yeah, they still had the Eagles there.
They still do dances?
No, I don't think so. But
well, I was curious for that. You would go to that movie theater. I'm assuming during high school, the war's going on. There must have been all sorts of newsreels about what was going on in the war.
Yeah.
Can you talk about anything you remember about going to the theater and seeing the newsreels and things?
Yeah, they had, like you say, they used to have the main movie. They would have cartoons, and they'd also have a newsreel. And some of it was at Pathé News, I think was the name of the company that had the news. And they would tell what was going on, like somehow or other they got footage from war correspondents sending it back, and they would show what was happening in Europe, Germany, and so forth. And the irony thing of this whole thing is, the guy I started work at the post office, Railway Mail, was Japanese. He was in that Nisi outfit. And he and I got to be real close friends. He was fighting the Germans, and I'm of German descent, and I'm fighting the Japanese. So we just kind of crisscross our what do you call it, heritage. I didn't mean to butt in, but that just seems so.
Well, before you went in, obviously there must have been people from your community who'd already enlisted and went. Would there be would you hear news reports, or would they anything like somebody from the neighborhood be in a battle and they would be in the newsreel or anything like that?
I never ever really saw anybody personally that would be on the newsreel. They might have talked about the outfit that they were in, like North Africa.
Right. That's what I would kind of think.
But no, they wouldn't. You'd be lucky if you actually, even today, I'll go on my iPad and look at stuff that happened in the Pacific and in Germany and that, and you'd be lucky if you ever seen anybody that you knew from your hometown.
Right. Well, what I kind of meant is were people keeping track of how would people get news about? I guess letters, obviously. But I was wondering, as a community, were people aware of who was sent out and whether somebody, Johnny Smith, was in Europe and
Well,
had been in this battle, and then you would see that newsreel on that battle or something?
a lot of times the neighbors that had men in the service, they would say, "Oh my, I'm just going to use a name. My little Johnny, he's in North Africa," and then the other person might say, "Oh, mine's over in the Pacific, in Guadalcanal or something like that." They would trade information that way. But you know, all the while I was on board ship, they censored your mail. In fact, I seen some of them I sent home, and it looked like the guy just hatchet everything up, cut it out. So I never did say anything because I figured there's no, and there wasn't much to talk about. You're out at sea, you're at so many days away from where you're going to go, Guam or whatever, you know, and that's about as.
How big was the crew on your ship?
Well, we had 40 enlisted men. That took care of people that had rates like signalmen or radiomen, motor machinist, whatever, and 4 officers. And the 4 officers had to take over all the duties of commissary, engineering, whatever. And the executive officer, he pretty well did a lot of the running work for the captain. If the captain didn't have time to do all of it, he would have to. Both the captain and the exec had to know how to, what do you call it, navigate the ship. I keep saying ship. It's a cardinal sin. Yeah, yeah. My boat.
What were some of the duties that you were assigned to do when you were on board?
Well, all the seamen had to work, do mess cook duty. That was served meals and cleaned up everything, you know. I had to do that once or twice that I remember. And what do you call it? You just help the cook or the baker clean up their utensils and stuff like that. And we used to have stainless steel trays that had sections in it, and that's where you got your food. Well, although our ship, we were lucky. Most of the time, we had bowls, and platters, and things like that. We ate like in a boarding house. We'd sit down, and they'd bring the bowls and stuff like that. You pass the stuff around to everybody, and what do you call it? We ate like that. The time we had the few guys from the Marine and the Army on our ship to check this little island out, we gave them our hot meals. Well, they start to run real fast to get up. They, hey, take it easy. There's plenty for everybody. Just take your time. And they went and sat in, on the bench by the table, and they passed. I'm telling you, those guys were so happy. They really enjoyed that.
Did you see any like maybe Japanese planes fly by or anything like that?
One night we did, and they said don't fire at it. They didn't want to dispose our location. It actually, we could have knocked that thing down almost with our fist. It was so low. It was looking for us, and what do you call it? And they also had when we was at Leyte, one of the Japanese had a different philosophy. They don't surrender, and they will sacrifice their life. What they did, they'd strap bombs or whatever on them, and they'd go and swim in the what do you call it, and they'd take a box and put it over their head and had the thing fixed so they could see, and they just kind of look like it was drifting, and they'd come up close to a ship, and then they'd shoot the thing, their bombs or whatever they had. They would do that at nighttime.
It's like a human torpedo.
Yeah. Yeah, they'd get alongside and blow up. I never ever thought of doing anything like that. Didn't have to. We outnumbered them finally.
I doubt that you saw this, but I'll ask anyway since you're out in the islands. You know, I heard there was a a government push to try to get beer out to guys that were like Marines that were out in the islands. I don't know if you ever saw any beer being delivered on any of those islands.
I never saw that, but we did get a ration one time. And we got, well, however many men there was, they figured so many cases of beer, you know. And we got that at Christmas Eve, I think it was. We was in New Guinea. That's a place I forgot to mention.
Mm-hmm.
They already had taken New Guinea, and they still was fighting in some of the outposts. The Aussies, the Australians, was still fighting some of them, but it was secure where we was. And what he caught, they rationed out maybe 2 cans of beer, and they had the beer locked up in where we used to have ammunition. Well, you know what? American ingenuity. Somebody found out that the beer was up there, and they had the thing locked, but they had a chain on it, and this hatch would open up so far. They got a boat hook, and they took this boat hook and jammed it into the box and pulled it up close to the, what do you call it, the hatch, emptied out the cans of beer. They were warm, of course, and we sat and drank warm beer, and we were sitting in between the rocket launchers, and that warm beer, I think a bunch of us got drunk drinking that. I fell overside into the water, and I had to get up where they used to put the ramps down, and there was a great big pipe there. I swam and jumped up into the thing, got a hold of it, got on there, and what he caught, we never got any trouble out of that because they couldn't pin down who the culprits were.
Well, now it's on tape. Now we got you on tape now.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
We'll send it to the Department of Defense.
You could send me to jail. I'm 93. I'll be 94. I won't spend too much time there.
Well, just one last question. Did anybody else in your, like even your grandkids, did anybody else serve in the military, or is there anyone who did any military service?
Right now, my granddaughter's husband, we call him our grandson-in-law. He's in the Air Force. He's a pilot in the Air Force. He's right now he's out in Tinker Air Force Base, and he's shortly about ready to be transferred where he's going to have his long stay. It's going to be Okinawa, and his wife will get to go there too. And they got a what do you call it, a child, a great grandson, and he's always at different places. He's buying me caps. I got one that's got the USS Arizona on it, where he happened to be in Pearl Harbor. And he also got one that's knitted when he was down in Panama City, Florida. He flew down there for some reason or other. So, no, he calls me Grandpa, and we recognize each other as family.
Yeah,
Great.
for sure.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope I explained everything as best I could, and
John,
if there's anything else, Ray?
John, you did a wonderful job, and at this point in time, I want to thank you for the interview, but most affectionately, I want to thank you for your friendship and your service to our country. It's because of fellows like you that we have the country we do today, and I thank you.
You're welcome. And I would like to say something about Ray. He's the hardest working veteran that I know. He runs the breakfast that we have the first Friday of the month, and he devotes an awful lot of time. And he's not backward when it comes to work.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, Ray.
Thank you.